Hello and welcome to another lesson from Level Up Mathematics. In today's lesson, we will be reviewing the percent proportion that you most likely learned in 6th grade. So before we get started on some examples, let's talk about what the percent proportion is. Percent problems can be solved using the percent proportion, which says the part over the whole is equal to the percent over 100. Now, in percentage problems, you'll be given 3 of these things and asked to find the 4th thing. So, for an example, you might be asked to find the percent. For example, 3 is what percent of 4? So they've given you the part and the whole. The part is 3, the whole is 4. And they want to know what is the percent. So that would be x over 100. So 3 is what percent of 4? 3 over 4 equals x over 100. You could also be asked to find the part. What number is 75% of 4? So this time we do not know the part. We know the whole is 4, and we know the percent is 75. So our proportion would be x over 4 equals 75 over 100. The last thing you might be asked is to find the whole or the total. 3 is 75% of what number? So this time we don't know the whole or the total. So we'll say 3 over x equals 75 over 100. Now, let's look at some of the examples where we'll actually solve to find the missing piece. So in problem A, it says 14 is what percent of 20? So I'm going to identify the percent, the part, and the whole. Now in this problem, we don't know the percent, okay? And then we do know the whole here. If you just look for the word of, the number that comes after the word of is your whole. So our whole is 20, which means our part is 14. So our percent proportion would be 14 over 20 equals x over 100. Now, you can solve these a couple ways. I usually try to solve it by finding the scale factor because that's the easiest way to me and a way I don't have to use long division. So I noticed that 20 will go into 100 5 times. So in this problem, I have a scale factor of 5. So to find my missing number, I just multiply the numerator by 5. So 14 times 5 is 70. So we could say 14 is 70% of 20. All right, problem B. What number is 25% of 210? So percent, part, whole. I know the percent in this problem. I know the whole is 210. I do not know the part. So x over 210 is equal to 25 over 100. Now, to get the scale factor here, one thing I'm noticing is this 25 over 100. I could take 100 and divide it by 4 to get 25. So that means I could take 210 and divide it by 4 to get x. So let's do that. 4 into 210. 4 goes into 21 5 times. Subtract and bring down. 4 goes into 10 2 times. 2 times 4 is 8. And I'll add a decimal and a 0 so I can bring down a 0. 4 goes into 20 5 times. So 52.5 is 25% of 210. All right, problem C. 27 is 90% of what number? So this time we know the part is 27. We do not know the whole. And I know the percent is 90. Now, on this problem, I'm having a little bit of trouble seeing the scale factor. So sometimes if you'll reduce your fraction, like say 90 over 100, I could divide those both by 10 and simplify it a little bit and see if it's easier to find your scale factor. So if I simplify 90 over 10 by dividing both the numerator and denominator by 10, I would get 27 equals 9 over 10. Now it's easy to see that the scale factor, 9 times 3 would give me 27, and 10 times 3 would give me 30. So 27 is 90% of 30. All right. Problem D. 12 is what percent of 40? So this time we know the part, we know the whole, we do not know the percent. Again, this is another problem. 40 won't go into 100 evenly. 12 won't go into 40 evenly. So this is another case where you can sometimes simplify your fraction and make it easier to find your scale factor. So I'm going to divide the top and the bottom by a common factor of 4. Let's see what that will give us. 12 divided by 4 is 3. 40 divided by 4 is 10. Oh, that's much nicer, because now I can see I have a scale factor of 10. So if I multiply the numerator by 10, I get 30. So 12 is 30% of 40. All right, let's look at some real world situations. In example 2, it says for each situation, set up a percent proportion and solve. In part A, it says in a park, 40% of the trees change color in the fall. There are 500 trees in the park. How many trees in the park change color in the fall? So I want to identify percent, part, whole. So we know our percent is 40, all right? The only other information we've been given here is the 500. There are 500 trees. So that's the total number of trees. So that means that's our whole. We want to know, of the 500, how many change color. So we don't know the part. So we'll say x over 500 is equal to 40 over 100. So now I want to look and see, can I determine my scale factor here? Well, to get from 100 to 500, I would simply have to multiply by 5. So I could do the same thing with the 40. 40 times 5 would give me 200. So 200 trees change color. 200 trees change color. Problem B. There are 90 girls and 60 boys in the 7th grade at a middle school. Of these students, 9 girls and 3 boys write left-handed. What percentage of the 7th graders at this middle school write left-handed? All right, let's identify our pieces here. Percent, part, whole. All right, so the question says what percentage? So that means our percentage is unknown. So we want the part and the whole. The only thing is you're going to have to do a little bit of work to find the part and the whole here. The whole represents the total. So there were 90 girls and 60 boys. So you'll have to add that up to get your total. So 90 plus 60 is 150. Now the part would be the 9 girls and 3 boys. So 9 plus 3 is 12. So our percent proportion would be 12 out of 150 is equal to X out of 100. All right, so I want to get my scale factor here. So 150 divided by 100 is 1.5. Oh, we need to go the other direction. I'm going from 150 to 100. So I would have to divide 150 by 1.5. So to find X, I would have to take 12 and divide it by 1.5. So 12 divided by 1.5. Remember, when we're dividing by decimals, your divisor has to be a whole number. So I'm going to multiply these both by 10 and rewrite that as 120 divided by 15. All right, so let's see if I can simplify that. If I divide these both by 3, 120 divided by 3 would be 40. 15 divided by 3 would be 5. And 40 divided by 5 is 8. So 8% of the 7th graders write left-handed. Okay, problem C. Dennis made an extra $245 for selling furniture. The extra $245 was 75% of the total value of the furniture. What was the total value of the furniture Dennis sold? So percent, part, whole. We know our percent is 7. We know the part is 245. But in this problem, we don't know the total or the whole. So 7 over X equals, oh, excuse me, why did I write that? I meant to write 245 over X equals 7 over 100. Now, in this problem, it's a little bit hard to see the scale factor. I want to know what would I have to multiply 7 by to get 245. So I'm going to say 7, see how many times 7 will go into 245. 7 times 3 is 21. Subtract and bring down. 7 goes into 35 5 times. So my scale factor is 35. So I just need to find, or why did I write that? I need to multiply the 100 by 35. So X would be 3,500. So Dennis sold a total of $3,500 worth of furniture. All right, problem D. Out of 850 people at an art museum, 32% had an annual pass. How many of the people did not have an annual pass? Percent, part, whole. All right, the whole here is the 850 people. That's the total number of people at the art museum. But on the percent, be very careful. They gave you the percent for the people that did have a pass. We want the percent for how many did not have a pass. So 100 minus 32. So 68% did not have an annual pass. And we do not know the part. So X over 850 equals 68 over 100. So to get from 100 to 850, we would simply multiply by 8.5. So we'd have to do the same thing to the numerator. So 68 times 8.5. 8 times 5 is 40. That'd be 34. Drop a 0. 8 times 8 is 64. 6 times 8 is 48. 6 is 48. And 6, 54. Move my decimal in one place. So 578 did not have an annual pass. And that concludes today's lesson, the percent proportion.